Melk was not very far from Mauthausen. Oh, it's about 80 kilometers from Vienna, west of Vienna. And there, we found our mission there was to labor, of course, heavy labor. What the Germans did at this time, this was 44 already, this sort of the last year of the war, and the Allies have destroyed almost everything that they could spot from the air in terms of factories making war machinery and all that stuff. So in desperation, they were trying to build factories in mountains. So we got there, we drilled tunnels. So it was sort of a sandy kind of substance. So we had to drill with jackhammers and shovel it onto belts and bring it out, and they had train way haul it away, and we did that for quite a few months. Then we lined them with concrete. So can imagine shoveling concrete into these boards that were, because they had these steel frames, and all that. So this was very, very heavy labor, and we didn't have the strength. We didn't have any food. So I found after the war ended that the survival rate in Melk in the less than a year that we were there was 9%. Imagine 90-some people out of 100 did not make it. You were either starved to death, worked to death, or diseases which were rampant. Dysentery was there all the time, and that was a disease that just couldn't be stopped. And it was a horrible thing. So many of my friends just, you could tell that they got it because they got to look dead. They were yellow, and they stunk. They smelled horribly. And a few days and they died. And if not dead, beatings. For any little reason. The people that ran the camp inside were prisoners, but most of them were German. And they were there for either criminal or other political reasons in Germany. But they were horrible, horrible people. They were sadists, and they would just as soon kill you than look at you, really. And so you were sort of in danger. Your life was in danger all the time, if not one thing or another. So yeah, people were dying like flies. The crematoria was right behind the barracks where I stayed, and there were people that carried the dead to the crematoria all day long, all day and all night, constantly. There was this march of carrying the dead to be burned. So there were many times that I envied those that were dead already, because they didn't have to go through the stuff, And going back to the beatings, I got beaten once, 10 lashes, for having a piece of blanket on me, because when we went to work by train. We marched out of the camp, maybe about 15 minutes, to a railroad, which they built up a ramp. So we just marched up to this ramp. So the train came precisely at a certain time of the day, and they opened the doors, and we just walked into these cars, again, box cars. And it took us a half hour to get to work, and from there we went to our work sites. However, came December, January, as we were standing and waiting there for our train, instead of being there precisely on time, the trains wouldn't come sometimes 15 minutes, sometimes an hour, sometimes 2 hours, and even 3 hours late. Well, Austria in the wintertime is a horribly cold country. And we were up off the ground, especially on this platform, waiting there. So people were just dying like flies, The winds were howling through. We didn't have any clothing. The shoes that I had were a pair of wooden clogs, and I had cement bag paper that I took at the work site, and wrap my feet around that with wire. And that was my socks, you know, that was what to keep my feet warm. So at the work site one day I spotted in the dump a piece of blanket. And I thought, oh, wouldn't that be great to have underneath my shirt to wrap myself around that, you know, to keep me a little warm when we stood there. We were stomping those that still had little energy and rubbing each other's backs to keep warm. And I would have that would keep me warm. But the guy, they called him capos, the capo inside the camp who was in charge of my building, somehow found out that I had a piece of blanket. So he called me into his little office there. He says, don't you know that cutting up blankets is sabotage against the German government? I said, but they didn't do that. I says, I found it. He says, hell, you did. I don't believe you. So he proceeded to give me 10 lashes, and they had these rubber hoses filled with lead or whatever in them. Well, after the second or third one, I didn't know what happened to me. But finally I came to. And I had to make a life or death decision right at that moment, because I had two choices to make. I either go to sick call to the infirmary, that I'm sick and I can't go to work, or I had to go to work. But I was in such horrible pain. I couldn't sit, I couldn't walk, I couldn't do anything. So what am I to do? I went to work the next day. How in the world I ever did that, I have no idea. Where did it come from? You know, where did that whatever it took, and but I went, and I couldn't flop off either. I had to put in a day's work, you know, because they were there with hoses as well, you know. So I managed to kind of go through with that, but there were other things going on, you know. We worked till midnight, and then we went and got our train back to the barracks. We were exhausted, tired, hungry, sleepy. So we finally made our way to the barracks, even if we were not late. So you had to stand in line to get your food. And then once a week you had to stand in line for lice control, which means they checked you for lice. And then they beat you if you had lice. And then they lined you up another line, because there were guys, again, shaving you and powdering you, you know. And then you had to sit for hours going through your shirt and your underpants looking for lice and killing them.